Happy Saturday. I am so thrilled to be back. Okay, you guys, I've missed you. And I have to tell you, for those of you who are on my newsletter list, you know that I had COVID. I went to an event in Colorado and spoke, and all three of the speakers, plus 30 people in the church, got COVID. And it has been a real humdinger, let me tell you. But I know that I missed a couple of weeks of videoing. And I want to just say a big thank you to Kim Nowlin, who filled in for me one week. What a great job she did on helping you to know what you should wear for the Thanksgiving holiday. But I'm so glad to be back, and hopefully I won't miss again. But I hope you are all staying well. And then on top of it, November was just hard. You know how I hope I don't cry, but I'm going to cry. So maybe we won't talk about that. But you know how my cat always made a video appearance, Pokey, I had to put her down this week, and she had kidney and heart failure. And so, oh my goodness, I didn't plan to cry. Should have even brought that up, but you'll be missing her in our videos. I have another one, but she doesn't really like to make appearances, so you probably won't be seeing her. But today I have a special treat for you. And I have, normally on this channel, we talk about fashion, right? And a few weeks ago in my VIP, before I got sick with COVID, actually it was like right at the beginning, I had a guest come on and speak to my VIP community about the topic of friendship. And you guys, she was a favorite. They loved her. In fact, they said they could have kept on listening to her. Like they wish she would have kept on speaking. And I think she talked for like 20 or 25 minutes, but she was just such a treat. I thought, you know what, this week I need something light because my head is not all in place in my brain, and I'm still a little tired, and then my cat and all of that. And I thought, you know what, Maggie would be the perfect person to come on here and talk to you about friendship, because she has such wisdom when it comes to friendship that I think you're going to glean from it. And I know that when you think, okay, this is a fashion channel, but you know what? I'm glad that we went to another word, friendship, for this month, because December brings lots of interesting things to us. Sometimes we think, gosh, I would need to reach out to that old friend, and then you feel guilty when you don't, and all of those kinds of things. But let me go ahead and bring her on with us. And so you get to meet her, and here she is. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Shari, and hi, everybody. What a privilege to be here, and what a beautiful introduction. I was crying not only about the loss of your kitty, but just what it means to me to have you sharing this channel with me and your friends, Shari. That means so much. What generosity of heart you have to do this. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Oh my goodness, it's my honor to have you. And so I want to just say that Maggie is she's a brand new author. She was an author earlier this year. Got to wipe those tears again. She was a first-time author this year, but she's in the middle of writing another book now. And so you've not seen the end of her, but I do have the book and I want to share it. And it's called This Life We Share. And if you are on my newsletter list, I put that in my newsletter this week, and I'm going to put it in a couple of more weeks too, as one of my favorite gift ideas for this season. So if you're not on my newsletter, go ahead to my website and sign up for it there. But I will tell you, one of the things that I was so impressed with, Maggie, is your idea of friendship and the freedom that you gave to us when you talked to us about not feeling so guilty about not being in connection with friends of old when your life changes. And you said that there are three ways, or there's three different types of friendship. Am I right? Is that kind of what you talked about? Can you explain that to us?
I sure will. And in fact, I think there is a connection between friendship and fashion, because as women, not that we don't have male friends, we certainly do. I have men in my life that I really see as my brothers. But my closest friends, besides my spouse, are my girlfriends. And somebody once said, in fact, it was someone, Shari, in the fashion industry, when she said, trying to keep all of your old friends is like trying to keep all of your old clothes in your closet. Pretty soon it's so crowded, you don't have room for anything more. So, and I don't say that callously. I am a keeper. I don't want to say a curator of friends, but friendships are very important to me. And I am still in touch with friends that I have had. I am now in my late 60s, and I still have friends. In fact, when my book came out, I have a friend I had actually lost touch with, believe it or not, at about the age of 5. We were best friends until we were about 5 or 6 and entered school. And then we went different ways. She was very popular. I was not at all. But 60 years later, we circled back. We have both become believers in Jesus Christ. And she circled back, was on the launch team for my book. And I just want to weep when I say that, because we cannot always keep all of our old friends. And I want to mention those 3 seasons of friendship in a moment. But sometimes, even while our oldest friends may not any longer be our closest friends, sometimes those friendships, once lost, do return to us. But in my book, one of the things I talk about, as you said, the book is about friendship. It's about friendship with ourselves, because it was Jesus himself who said, love your neighbor as yourself. And I have always focused on the love your neighbor part. And only recently I've thought, no, he said, love your neighbor as yourself, which means it doesn't mean that kind of I'm worth it mentality that sometimes we see in our culture. What it does mean is that we do need to care for ourselves, our own emotions, our mental, spiritual, and physical health. That's where sort of this life we share begins, with attending to our own inner journey, and then our friendship with others, and ultimately our friendship with God. And as you mentioned, the 3 seasons of friendship that I like to talk about are first, shared seasons of life. And all of us have had friends that we met when we were, I call this walking side by side. It might mean like the friend I had when I was 5. We were walking side by side when we were just little girls, but then we were walking in different places on our journey for over 60 years until our paths converge again. It just astonishes me. And there are others, friends that we have that we walk side by side with, that might be friends in school, or that we raise our kids together, or we are working side by side in neighboring cubicles, or we're working next to each other on a church committee. So that's the first season of friendship, walking side by side. The second is what I call shared responsibilities, working side by side. Have you ever had the experience? In fact, I used to say to my kids, we raised 5 teenagers at the same time. That is a story for another time. But I used to say to the kids, you need a friend? Join a team. Join a group of people who have the shared passion for something that you do. And this is good advice for big girls too, because when you move to a new place, or you're isolated, as many of us have been this year, or you're at a new church, or like me, you've relocated recently and you're starting all over again, working at home instead of in a workplace, not having kids in school, where do you find those friends? Volunteer, or jump into a committee at church or in your community. And you will find, I guarantee it, that you will make friends because they care about the same things you do. We often call those affinity groups. So the first was shared seasons of life, walking side by side, then shared responsibilities in life, working side by side. And the third, which is self-explanatory, would be shared faith, when we're worshiping side by side. So those are the 3 seasons I talk about in This Life We Share, and that you and I have talked about, Shari.
Pardon me?
And that you and I have talked about even personally. Because you and I met, I consider you a very good friend, and we only met this year for the very first time. But we have become sisters of the heart. So no matter what season of your life you're in, and I am in the 3rd trimester, as I like to put it.
I love it.
At 67, I'm not only in the second half or the second act, I'm in the 3rd trimester.
Third trimester. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. All right. So one of the things that I do love about your book is its reflections. First of all, a lot of people don't want to sit down and read a whole book, like chapter by chapter by chapter. But what I really respect about your book is that it's topical. So, but each one relates to friendship. And so it's topical in that if you're experiencing anxiety, or if you're experiencing a loss, or if you're experiencing like something, there's something that you can pick up the book and go to. And so one thing that I thought was super cute are the words that you use, which are adorable. Keeping the salsa in your marriage, which was so good. But the way, ladies, the way she has the book broken up is by section. So there's the inner journey, there's the intentional journey, the relational journey, and the God of your journey, which is just so beautiful. And I think they're connected so well. But when it comes to outer appearance, and that's what we talk a lot about, where fashion meets faith, we want the inner beauty to show up on the outside. But one of your chapters or one of your reflections is called When You Don't Feel Good Enough. And I know that a lot of women that, well, this time of year, any time of year, but maybe even especially, I think, when it comes to our outer appearance, we don't feel like we measure up. I don't know if you remember that chapter in your book. You probably do because you wrote it. But sometimes I know when somebody go, "Oh, what'd you write?" Sometimes can you kind of address that for us, or address it for the people who are listening and what that would look like?
Sure. I'm kind of flipping to that section right now because it's interesting you picked on that one, Shari, because I did a national radio interview with Susie Larson, earlier this year. And that was the chapter she wanted to discuss on air because she said it really surprised her, because what I'm talking about in there is, and I'm glad your listeners you're gonna get what I mean by this. Sometimes we don't feel good enough because maybe we are not the best person for what it is that we're going for. I mean, but the wonderful thing is, we all need to learn to play second fiddle well. I talk about that in the book because we live in a world where, of course, there's a certain generation that's raised to say, we're all winners. We can all be number one. And then we constantly feel like if we're not, we're losers. One of the examples I use in the book is one of my favorite shows is This Is Us, because I love the way it interweaves the storylines of the Pearson triplets, the big three, over the 40 years of their life. But there's an incident, and I describe it in the book, where Kate, who struggles with her weight, goes to an audition, and she's immediately dismissed. And she gets so angry, and she assumes it's because she's not thin enough. And she storms her way back into the studio, and she says, I demand to give it a chance. I don't want to be dismissed just because I'm heavier than the other girls. And then the director calls another singer forward. He has her sing the same song, and she is fabulous. And the director says to Kate Pearson, he said, "Do you hear that? That's," I forget what her name was in the show, but she's now our backup singer because she's not good enough, and neither are you. He said, I don't care what you look like. It's not about your weight. It's the fact that there are sometimes that are just people who are better. And Kate actually went out of that studio with a smile on her face. And it seems like a strange story for me to tell, but it encouraged me because I thought sometimes we think we don't get the job or the promotion or the gig because we're the wrong age or size or ethnicity or political affiliation. Sometimes it's just because there is somebody better. But here's the wonderful thing, Shari. We are all more than good enough for what God has intended for us. Like, I could never be the CEO of an organization like you have, where fashion meets faith, because you are so uniquely gifted. I might try to do something like you have, but I wouldn't be good enough. And that's okay, because that wasn't God's plan for me. Someone else might say, oh, but I couldn't be a writer, or I couldn't be a homeschool mom, or I couldn't do this or that. And that's okay. It is okay. We don't all have to be the best at anything, but we are the best at what God has designed perfectly for us. That's why Ephesians says that we are God's masterpiece, and he has created things from time immemorial that he has designed for us to do. And as we discover them and we pursue them with passion and purpose, we will find out that we're not just good enough. We are the best at God's plan for us. So thanks for picking on that chapter. It has kind of a twist in it.
It does. Okay, so you mentioned that you were 67 or are 67.
Yep.
And I know when you were talking to our VIP community, you said that this was your first time writing a book. And I know we said we're talking about friendship here, but we're sort of veering in different direction, but that's Holy Spirit, I think, can move us. So hopefully this will encourage someone. But I love that you say at 67, you wrote your first book. And of course, you got your contract, probably a couple years ago and how that goes. But I think that is so encouraging for those who think they're too old. And so when it comes to being a certain age, just like you said, if you're supposed to write a book, then God's going to give you those words and you're supposed to do that. And you'll be amazing at it. And there are a ton of authors out there, ladies, but your story hasn't been written.
That's right.
And right. And what'd your husband say about the different words you used on your blog? And
oh yeah, well, I've been blogging for years and almost nobody read it. And then amazingly, one day a publisher did and wrote and said, "I think you've got a book in you." And Shari, I cried because I had always said no to myself. My husband used to say, "Maggie, you're going to write a book someday." And I said very patronizingly, like, "Oh, honey, you don't understand publishing. Nobody will ever publish the kind of stuff I write." But he believed in me, and so did Nav Press. And when that book came out this year, when I was turning 67, Shari, it was a reminder to me that in God's economy, it is never too late. The last third of life or the last half can be the best third or the best half. One of my favorite characters in scripture is Miriam, who became one of the 3 great leaders of Israel when she was probably about 90. We often think about, of course, Moses and Aaron, her younger brothers, but Miriam was the worship leader. And that's a very important task when you're trying to, corral 2 million Israelites through the desert. So Miriam leading them in worship was equally as important as the jobs that God gave to her brothers, Moses and Aaron. And she did it when she was probably about 90, if we do the math. So there's so many other stories. Elizabeth, who was older, Deborah the judge, many women whom it wasn't until their years of maturity that God took them into the last and greatest part of their work. In fact, I am right now working on a TED Talk I'm going to be doing this upcoming spring. And it's going to be called something like helping invisible women to step from the shadows into the greatest calling of their lives. And I'm going to be mentioning people like Grandma Moses, who started painting after she was 65, and Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote her first Little House book, I think at 65. And there's Sojourner Truth, who was a great abolitionist in the last third of her life. There's so many inspirational stories, and we need to tell those to each other. So we don't think, "Oh, I've missed my chance." No, like Hamilton said, we're not going to give away our shots.
That's right. That's right.
Not when Jesus plus nothing is still Jesus.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness.
We feel like nothing. We've got Jesus.
We have Jesus.
So I always tell people way more stuff than they ever wanted to know. So you were so patient.
Oh no, I'm sure people are like, "Yay, tell me more of that." All right. So here's what I want to talk about as we're gearing it up for Christmas. All right. So those friends that you had years ago, not you personally, but people who have friends that they just haven't seen in a really long time. Mm-hmm. Can you let us off the hook? Tell us, give us, just talk to us about that.
That's right. That's right. And I have struggled with that, Shari, because I have always tried to keep in touch with all of my friends. And my husband and I have been in the pastorate. He's pastored 3 different churches. He's retired from the last one, but those churches were our families. And I considered our church flock our friends. But and the pastor's wife and me wants to stay in touch with every friend I made in every church, and I can't. And neither can I expect them to stay in touch with us. I think we have to bless the years that we had together, to hold on to the memories, the good ones as well as some of the painful ones. I have a story in the book that you've read called Friendship Fail. It's not about somebody else failing. It's about my failures with a friendship that at one time was very important to me. And yeah, we both made mistakes, but I hold myself most responsible. And it's been 30 years and there has been no contact. Will that person someday come back into my life? Maybe. but I know I actually did everything I could to repair it. And two of my favorite verses in scripture, I think it says it in Luke and in Romans, where it says, live at peace with all people as much as it's up to you. That's the disclaimer. We can't, there are some things we've got to let go because they may have become toxic or even abusive or clinging or too dependent on the part of either of us. But there's other times we need to say, you know, I gave it my best. And now I need to allow that friend to move on and not become bitter because other friends mean more to her now or other people are more in my life now. For instance, Shari, at the retreat where you and I met just at the beginning of this year, I've been in online Bible study with some of those gals. And those are the ones now that I turn to, as well as you, when I've had a prayer need this year. And it doesn't mean that my friends from 10, 20, 40 years ago aren't important. They are. But it does mean we're in different places now. And sometimes proximity will breed closer friends. Sometimes we're just different people now than we were then. And we don't have the affinity that we once had. And that's okay. We don't need to feel guilt about that. If somebody offers you a ticket on that guilt trip, don't even take it. Don't even take it, you know?
All right,
No, I'm waiting for the next train, girlfriend, but I'm going to pass on this ride right now.
All right. So would you say, and I think you would say yes, but you know how you hear people say, and I say I have a BFF. So I didn't have a BFF. I mean, I had one all through elementary school and high school. And then, you get new friends as you go through the years, right? And then I didn't really find a really close BFF until I was 50. I was turning 50. But it doesn't mean because I say she's my BFF, it doesn't mean that my other really close friends are not my close friends, because they are. Different people serve different purposes, I think, in our lives, right?
Yes.
But what do you say to people who say, well, I don't have a BFF?
That's a tough one because, one of the things I talk about in the book is Anne Shirley and Diana Barrett, whom you might remember as the two BFFs in Anne of Green Gables. And Anne says to her, oh, I've wanted a bosom friend all my life. Will you be my bosom friend? Well, what could Diana say to that? But, well, yes. And they were. But if you go on to read the other Anne books, sometimes the friendship went through difficult times. And we're not always going to have a BFF. It may be that there's times in school that you find somebody that you can be safe with that needs a friend like you do, and then you go your separate ways. Or it may be, we had one move about 20 years ago. And Shari, I prayed for 9 years for a best friend. And it's not that the women around me weren't lovely people. They were. But I was also the wife of their pastor. And that can be sort of a little different relationship. So I prayed for 9 years until somebody else moved into the area who she didn't have any friends either. Well, you know what I mean, of close friends. And we soon became sisters of the heart because we both needed somebody that we could really be ourselves with and not, oh, this is a missionary wife, or this is a pastor's wife, or this is my doctor's wife, or whatever. So what I would say to those of you who are saying, oh, Maggie, oh, Shari, I wish the three of us could be BFFs. You know what? We might be. I have made friends this year with women I have only talked to through social media or through online conferences I've done. And we have had wonderful conversations. And gosh, I've invited them to come here and stay with me if they're ever in my area. And I meant that sincerely. So I think we need to be careful how we define BFF, because we can feel like less than if we don't have somebody who knows our whole shared history. But if we can think, no, I've had people I was close to and were close to me during these different seasons of my life when we were walking side by side or working side by side or worshiping side by side. And maybe I was a BFF to them when I didn't even realize it. Or maybe I was the one who reached out to them at the very day they desperately needed somebody to call or write them and say, just checking on you, or are you okay? And for that day, we became their best friend in a way that God intends. So I'd say you know how the fairy tale romances, some of us have been following season 4 of The Crown. And we realized that beautiful fairy tale romance between Charles and Diana, it turned out to be not so. I mean, she thought he was her Prince Charming. And sometimes we have friends that we think, gosh, we're going to be tight our whole lives. And then something happens and we go separate ways. And I think we have to say, thank you, Lord, for the privilege of the time we did have together, whether it be long or short, and not get bitter that that person maybe is not a good communicator. We might feel, hey, this should be reciprocal. I feel like I'm always initiating and you never reach out to me. And if that's so, we may have to say, okay, that's okay. I'm going to bless the time that we did have together. I'm going to thank God for the things I learned from her and hopefully that she did from me. But we're in a different place now, and that's okay. So, friend, if you're listening to this maybe with tears in your eyes, as Shari and I have been in tears today over some different things, Shari and I both just want to say to you, you keep watching for her and you keep praying for her. God has that friend for you. C.S. Lewis once said that friendship begins when one person says to the other, oh, you too? I thought I was the only one. So if you're listening to Shari and I right now and you're thinking, Shari has struggled too. She's gone through periods of her life that she didn't have a BFF. Maggie didn't. Then maybe it's okay that right now I'm feeling isolated and lonely. Maybe I'm going to meet that dear friend tomorrow or next week or next year. But in the meantime, God himself has promised to provide all my needs. That's why I often say that one of the greatest friend-finding principles in scripture, I think it's Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And if he meant all these things, Shari and friends, he meant our friendships as well. He will bring friends to us. I guarantee it.
And I love that you said that you prayed for 9 years for a friend.
Yeah.
And so, ladies, if you're not praying for a friend, start praying.
Right.
Ask the Lord for what you want. When you seek him, and all those things will be added to you, when you just sit with God and ask him and pour out your heart and say, you know what, I really want a good friend. And he will bring it to you. And you might have to join a team. Just like you said at the beginning, Maggie, join a team, because you can't sit at home and think somebody's going to come and knock on your door unless they're, a neighbor down the street, and they still might not come, right? But you got to get out there. You do have to get out there. But Maggie, thank you for sharing with us today. Just words of wisdom that I think this can be a very lonely time of year for people. And I just think this was a timely topic. And thank you. And ladies, if you want just a wonderful, wonderful book, go get this. It's This Life We Share, and it's 52 Reflections. And I love that it's short, because sometimes we don't have time to sit and read a whole lot. So
we don't.
Anyway, oh my goodness.
And I want to say, Shari, too, and I know this goes for you because you put your contact information right out there. And I know you stay in touch with a lot of women every week, including, all the different groups that you're involved in, VI community, Second Act Sisters, so many different groups that you're involved with. And I'm working here at my home in Western North Carolina, but if anybody wants to reach out to me, if they just Google MaggieRowe.com, MaggieRowe.com, MaggieRowe, and contact me, send me a note and just say, Maggie, I'm lonely. Would you pray for me? I have been here, fill in the blank, this number of time, and I just feel like nobody really knows I'm here. Write me and give me the privilege of praying for you. I'd be happy to do that.
I love that. And we'll put that up on the screen so they can see. Yeah, MaggieRowe.com. And thank you for being with us today. And ladies, I pray that you have a wonderful, beautiful week. Stay well. We will see you next Saturday with a new video. But in the meantime, just know that we love you. I'm so grateful that you tune in. And Maggie, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today.
It is my privilege and my pleasure, as they say at Chick-fil-A. It really is.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.